podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Megan Figueroa.
And I'm Carrie Gillen.
Did I sound weird to you when I just said that?
No.
Oh, your face made it seem like I sounded weird.
Well, because you were like looking away and then you're like,
Here I am.
Right, I have to respond. So you sounded fine, but you looked like you were completely in a different planet.
I was whipping around to the mic. I guess. I don't know. It's like I've never done this before every time. But yeah, here we are. And I have been watching so much TV lately, Carrie, I can't even tell you.
Oh, yeah?
I just finished Inventing Anna. And Julia Garner is the only reason to watch that, I would say. Mm-hmm. But have you heard her in it? Like clips?
I watched the trailer for it, so yes, I've heard her.
What is your impression as a linguist or just as a human person listening to?
Well, it's really hard. I mean, she's playing a Russian who's trying to sound German,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess that kind of what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so that was your impression?
I mean, it's really hard to pin down, but maybe that's on purpose.
So you, Anna Sorokin, the person that she's playing, you know of her as someone that's Russian trying to sound German.
Oh,
right?
I read the original New York Times article way back in the day.
Okay.
I was fascinated.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, a white woman doing dirty or doing her friends dirty in like a very, very skilled way, or just like kind of fucking up. Like you keep just, I don't know. It's failing up. Yeah. Okay. So you haven't heard Julia Garner talk about how she prepared for the accent or what she was thinking.
No.
Okay. Because she literally says it's German with Russian on top with a little bit of American or European, depending on who she's with. So it's kind of like what you just described. But it's interesting because in one of the episodes, they're like, a character starts talking to her in Russian, and she's taken aback, like she's very upset. She's like, oh, the guy says, oh, I'm sorry, I thought I heard some Russian in there. So that's the moment when I realized, oh, right, she doesn't want people to know she's Russian. So German has to be the base, or the German accent has to be the base. So
or the target, anyway.
You're right. But I actually have never heard the real Anna speak, so I don't know if it's actually close.
I don't know if I have either, actually.
This is just like my life. I'm just trying to make it work and figure things out.
Oh my god, Julia Garner nails it.
Okay, good.
What?
Why are you being like this? So dramatic.
Anna Delvey is a masterpiece, bitches.
I mean, she is a chameleon. Like, she's like an accent chameleon.
Like, okay, so I'm just like watching Ozark too, and it's so good. Like, it's like I don't know who Julia Garner is ever, because she always sounds different and it's always really good.
Yeah, what's his name? David Chen. He tweeted something like, I still don't know what she actually sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's from New York City, so I feel like I can
She's just talented ear. Oh my god, she fucking nails it. This is blowing my mind.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, so, and then I pulled this up. Anna Sorokin says, I don't feel like I sound like that. And then she says, it's like when you hear yourself on TV and it's not really the voice you hear in your head when you speak.
Right. Yeah.
And then she says, I don't think it's off. I think she kind of falls in and out of it. Some of it she gets right, but not everything.
That's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, but it also sounds like Julia Garner was kind of doing what you do. Actually, this is, I think, quite insightful. She said that she sometimes puts a little bit more American or more European in it, depending on who she's talking to, which we all do. We all put a little bit of, like sometimes when I'm around my dad, my vowels go from like 14 different vowels to 5, like in Spanish. So I have like, that changes. But I think that that's what Julia Garner is basically saying she's doing. But wow. So Julia Garner says that I was like, what is her accent? I didn't even know about her accent. I didn't even know what her accent was. It's a hybrid of different accents. This is a girl who said that she was German and people believed it, but she actually was born in Russia, so she's not going to have a Russian accent. And then she probably learned English in the British way because she's European and they don't learn American English. So again, very insightful stuff, and probably with the help of her dialect coach is, which she said that she used. So I think Julia Garner's choices with the accent are like the big thing that everyone's discussing about Inventing Anna. Because I do think it is the star of the show.
Right.
But now that I hear Anna Sorokin, for real, I think she fucking nailed it.
Probably. I mean, she's really good at the accents.
Wow. Well, oh my God, give this woman just the whole EGOT. I don't know how you can do that, but just give her all of the awards.
I mean, she at least should be getting some Emmys, if nothing else, just because she's done so much TV. She's been in other things too, but
yeah,
like some movies. But
I mean, she won for playing the character in Ozark a lot, like.
Oh, she did?
Recently. Yeah. So
that's good. She's really good.
That's the first time I heard her not be a character when she accepted that.
Oh, so you have heard her real accent.
I have. And it's just like unremarkable
Yorker, right?
compared to everything. Yeah. And so anyway, she says she works with a dialect coach, which I also wanted to bring up. So we've had accent/dialect coach Eric Singer, lovely Eric Singer, on our show. Mm-hmm. He just posted that he's excited because he has spent 8 months working with Austin Butler. I don't know who that is, but apparently he's playing Elvis in Baz Luhrmann's new thing.
Oh, yeah. I found his accent weird when I watched the trailer. I'm not convinced by that one.
I'm on before the shoot, and nobody's gonna remember me.
Yeah, so I was wondering what you thought about it.
But maybe in the movie it'll feel better. But I don't know. It didn't quite gel for me in the trailer.
But it made me realize that I don't really know what Elvis sounds like besides some very iconic clips of him performing on TV.
Oh, you've never watched him in a movie? Which I mean still performing, but...
No.
They asked me to do it, and I was anxious to do some live appearances. You know, it'd been a long time since I've been on stage in front of anybody live. And I was anxious to do some live appearances, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to get in front of the people.
It's going to be really interesting to see how people feel about the Elvis accent or idiolect or what's going to happen with this.
I wonder also, like, his face just looks really strange to me. I wonder if they've got prosthetics on his face. Like, I found it very uncanny valley.
Ah, okay.
So that might also be influencing my feelings about the dialect. Or a particular variety.
Yeah, maybe if you just heard it and wasn't watching the trailer.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
If there would be a difference.
I should try that.
But you're right, now that you say that. Yeah, he does look...
uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, he's definitely wearing something on his face. Yeah. But yeah, his lips, something around... And if it is his lips, if there's something around his mouth, I wonder if that's actually affecting...
Could be, yeah.
The idiolect, too.
Could be. By the way, completely like sidebar here, but this is the movie that Tom Hanks was filming when he got COVID.
Oh, they filmed it in, where were they? Like Australia?
Australia. Yeah, that's where Baz Luhrmann is from, so.
Oh, right, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So.
Which if you have not seen his first major movie, Strictly Ballroom, oh my God. Watch it.
Okay, I have not.
What?
I've never even heard of it. I know.
Oh my God, it's one of my favorite movies from the 90s, like, bar none. Like, I don't know. I don't even know how to, like, describe my love for it. Partially, it's going to be, like, of the era, but it's just so, like, it's ridiculous over the top silliness, but it's also heartfelt, and I don't know. It's also got the silly trope of, like, the woman takes off her glasses and she's suddenly hot. But
yeah, sure.
But
like Grease too. Grease with the
there's a Spanish connection.
Oh, okay. Strictly Ballroom. But yeah, no, I'm endlessly fascinated by actors' choices and how accents come out on screen.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And
I know it's hard.
It's definitely hard. Yeah, I try not to be too like judgmental.
Anyway,
accents are fun.
They are. And they're all equal.
They're all equal.
Yes.
Unless you say jams. Just kidding.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Don't get high when you're on a podcast, folks. You might have a viral pronunciation.
Yes. I love it. I'm still thinking about it.
Me too. Anyway, so today's episode is all about Myanmar or Burma.
Mm-hmm.
Take your pick.
Yep.
It's just over a year since the coup happened. We actually talked late last year, so things probably have changed, but most of the facts that we talk about are more, evergreen, so...
Yeah, and it's, again, one of those things where I learn basically everything that our guest says is me learning something.
Oh, and if you want to support us, you can support us at www.patreon.com/vocalfriespod.
Yes, and we'd be so grateful. We are an indie pod, so.
Yes, and we've got stickers and bonus episodes and a mug.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're very excited to have Katie Craig, who is the co-founder and director of the Myanmar Indigenous Community Partners, and we'll have the link in the show notes. So welcome, Katie.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here. I was saying to Carrie the other day, I was in a meeting with her. It's strange to like see your face when you're talking because I always just hear you in my headphones or like in my car.
Yeah, I know. It's nice though when we listen back because Carrie does editing, but then I listen back. It's like I can imagine just the conversation back in my head again, and I'm like, it's too bad that people don't get to see how much fun we actually have recording with people. But it's okay because it's a podcast, so you get what you get.
Yeah.
But yes, thanks for joining us and joining the long, great list of guests that we've had on. So, and we've never talked about. There's so many gaps.
We haven't talked about Asia at all. So
there's so many gaps.
I mean, of course there are many gaps. How many languages of the world are there?
I know.
But I'm glad that we're at least putting one little tiny pin in Asia.
Exactly.
Yeah, like one small little perspective.
Yes. So can you maybe just give our listeners a primer on the situation in Myanmar? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. Some people still call it Burma even. That's easier to say.
Right.
Yeah, we don't really have like an accepted, generally collective way to call the country, right, in English.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
At least people are asking me, how do you say it in English? Well, I don't know. In Burmese, we say it's sort of like Myanmar, but in English, we maybe decided to pronounce it differently. Like we don't call Mexico, Mexico, right?
Yeah. Well, you say it again. How you say it in Burmese?
Something like Myanmar.
Okay.
The R is there from the British.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great.
Anyway, so the situation, man, there's lots I could say. I mean, the current situation.
Well, as much as you can give us without like spending 3 hours on it, I guess.
Well, since this is a linguistics podcast, I'll include some parts that are relevant to language, I guess. So Myanmar is a country in Southeast Asia. Some people don't even know where it is. Maybe I should start there. It's west of Thailand. It borders Laos. It's south of China. What else do we border? India and Bangladesh to the west. So it's kind of an interesting place geographically. And it's very linguistically diverse, as you might imagine. There's something like 130 or over 130 languages used in the country. There still hasn't been all that much research that's been done. So I think that there's probably different languages and language varieties that we haven't really done any research on, so right? So that the outside world doesn't necessarily know about yet. Obviously, people living there already know about these, but
can I stop you real quick? How big, like geographically, like maybe as compared to a state in the U.S. for me?
About the same size as Texas.
Okay,
that's huge. Yeah, that's bigger than I expected.
Yeah, me too. I was imagining. I don't know why in my head. I know where it is, but for some reason I had a smaller idea. Okay.
Same.
So over like a Texas sized place, there are about 130 around different languages that are spoken. Okay.
Yeah. Plus sign languages, obviously. I don't know how many sign languages are used in the country, but I think more than one.
And will you remind us a little bit or tell us for the first time why at one point it was called Burma and now we're where we are?
That's a good question. So that kind of ties into the history of Myanmar. So it was colonized by the British. When the British first came, it wasn't the country of Myanmar. So by that, I mean, like, it wasn't one nation. They're like multiple nations and territories in what we now call Myanmar, which is significant to present day because it affects the way that people conceptualize of the country, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a land of many nations. That's left out a lot in like the media and things, but I think it's helpful in understanding the politics of Myanmar. Yeah. So yeah, it was named Burma by the British because I'm not sure Anglicization or the Englishization, whatever, of the word Bama. So Bama refers to a particular community, like an ethno-linguistic community. It's what people call the majority, quote unquote, language, the majority, quote unquote, people. You could also just call it the dominant language in people, right? So yeah, it refers to Bama, which is another way of saying Myanmar. Myanmar and Burma really mean the same thing. After the British, that's where I was going, after British colonization, a man by the name of General Ne Win kind of took over. Not kind of, he completely took over in 1962. And then 1988, there was a big uprising. If you pay attention to Myanmar at all, you'll have heard about that. So then after that, there were like these sham elections. And so it was around that time when they were like, I think it was kind of like a PR stunt, honestly, where they're like, we'll change the name of the country to Myanmar. I'm not entirely sure why I decided to. People kind of reject that because they feel like it gives more legitimacy to the military, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But some people don't have very strong feelings about it anymore.
And this is the very recent past. This is the 80s?
Yeah, I think it would change in the 90s, early 90s. But I think as a result of the 88 uprising.
So in my lifetime.
I remember it happening. And I also remember my dad saying Myanmar was associated with the junta. So one of the reasons why you reached out is because you want people to know what happened earlier this year. And I mean, I hope people have heard, but there's a good chance some people haven't. So maybe you can also explain that.
Especially Americans, because we are so American-centric.
I mean, especially our news and media, it's very American-centric. Yeah. Don't feel bad if you haven't heard about it. It just hasn't, unless you're friends with someone from the country or someone who's like associated with the country, then this might not have come across your news feed or whatever. I don't want to feel like make people feel bad.
Oh, that's what our podcast is all about.
Just bad vibes all around.
Yeah.
But you might have seen there's an American journalist, Danny Fenster, who was detained, I think in May. He was in jail for 9 months. Not 9 months, 6 months. He was recently released. So you might have seen that. But so on February 1st, the military decided that they were going to basically take over. So they claimed that there was election fraud in the 2020 election. So we also had election.
I'm sorry, what? Okay.
It's not just the United States going through this stuff.
It's not. Yeah, we had elections in 2020 and they claimed election fraud. So they decided that that was grounds for them to essentially take control of the country. So since then, there have been protests all over the country. There's been this massive, they're calling the civil disobedience movement, CDM, where people just won't work for the military. So doctors, school teachers, railway workers, they just refuse to work for the government. People aren't paying their electricity bills.
Oh, wow. So when they say not work for the government, it's just now the government is the military. So it's basically not working for the military. Okay, I see. Wow.
This is how I found out about it first, was the exercise video that came out on February 2nd.
Yes.
So there was a woman who was like filming her YouTube exercise video, and in the background there are the tanks coming in. So you can just watch the coup happening. Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, say we're we're recording. What is happening right now in the end of 2021?
What's happening at the end of 2021 in regards to...
what's the current situation? Is the military still in power?
It depends on who you ask, right? So there is a sort of a shadow government that was formed called the NUG, the National Unity Government, but they're not being given any legitimacy from the international community, essentially. So it's part of the advocacy efforts that are happening all over the world, is to encourage other governments to give more legitimacy to the NUG. So this was a democratically elected body of government.
Okay.
They never ceded power, but since some of them are still in the country, they can't really do it very openly.
Right. So are there still strikes? Are the doctors working?
Yeah, they're still striking. It's really, the result is really quite horrible.
This is during COVID, too.
During COVID, yeah.
Yeah,
but the doctors specifically have been targeted by the military.
What is the population around?
54 million.
Okay, so sorry, I have so many little questions. It's just I'm one of those Americans who often does not have a great knowledge base of places other than right here and now.
Not just America. I think other people in the world don't always know what's going on in the rest of the world either.
That's true. I just like to, definitely speaking from what I know, Americans struggle in this area.
So can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of the linguistic situation? So I know you said there's 130 plus languages, but What kind of languages are there? And maybe name a couple of other ones besides Burmese.
Yeah. So there's supposedly, not my research, but other people say that there's 6 different language families represented in the country.
Wow.
Indigenously. So the biggest one, I guess, is Tibeto-Burman, which would be like Burmese. You've heard of Chin languages, Karen languages. This even Kachin is probably Tibeto-Burman, Naga, Rakhine. So that's the biggest one. There's also, some people say Dai Kadai, but other people use another term. I can't remember what it is. But it's all what some people would call Dai languages, Tai. But in Burmese, they refer to Dai as Shan, so we call them Shan languages. They're really Thai. So I'll give you some context. Let's see, there's also Austronesian. I think just 1 or 2 in the south. What else is there? Some people call it Mon Khmer, some people call it Austroasiatic. So it's like the Wa language, Blang language. And what else? There's Hmong. Hmong is spoken by a small population. And what else? Indo-European. A couple in the west, if you've heard of Rohingya. That's an Indo-European language, as well as Chakma Dainet, which you probably haven't heard of. So that's overall a technical linguistic situation.
Yeah, that's really a wild situation with that many different language families in such a small area. I mean, I know it's as big as Texas, but still, it's impressive.
Yeah.
Is there a legal official language?
Yeah, the official language is Burmese, according to the Constitution. But the shadow government, the NUG, decided to abolish the 2008 Constitution. So if I say that it is the official language, I might be legitimizing the military. But
right, okay.
Government, even the NUG government is still the language of government. Whichever state, quote unquote, government. Because there's also like a parallel governments.
So why did you want to set up the Myanmar Indigenous Community Partners?
Yeah, I mean, where should I start? I mean, language is definitely a very sort of salient marker of identity, and it's very political. It's just very significant for a lot of reasons. And these different communities are asking for more language development, especially, I would say, language and education. They want to educate their children in their own language. So basically, we started to be able to serve these communities better, specifically in language development kind of things, but also potentially in other areas as well, and doing advocacy and awareness raising, things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what's the situation in schools then? Is it all just community based? Is it like, depending on where you happen to walk into, it's different?
In our work?
In Burma or Myanmar, are kids able to have access to other languages, or is it just Burmese?
There's really quite a lot of variety. So first, there is like the state schools that are run by the government, quote unquote, which haven't really been running, probably because of COVID. They've tried to open them again, but most people are not sending their kids. So those schools are in Burmese textbooks, Burmese language, even Burmese history, Burmese everything, which is very intentional in the past, especially. There used to be this one language, I don't know how to say it in English, like race, quote unquote, or ethnicity, whatever. One people, one country. They're used to that policy. But recently there have been some changes. So they have recently sort of started to develop what they call the local curriculum, which has kind of morphed in meaning as to what it is. It was just started to be implemented in the 2019-2020 school year. But they only had a portion of that curriculum, which is really just one subject. They only had a portion of it ready for that school year, and not every community even was able to implement it because there wasn't any funding. So anyone that was able to implement it did so because they funded it themselves. So there's that development, which I can talk about more if you want. But then there's also other, like I said, parallel education systems for different reasons. There's some areas where they're called self-administered zones. So especially the Wat, they kind of do their own thing on the border with China. The military has never really had much control over them, so they do whatever they want. They use a lot of the Wa language and Chinese. There's other areas like the Karen areas, or one sort of Karen area in the east where they are sort of the de facto government. So in some of their schools, it's all one of the Karen languages. It's not they don't necessarily use all of the different Karen languages, but there's one sort of dominant language within the Karen community that they use in their schools. There's kind of a variety all over the country, but the state schools are all in Burmese. That makes sense. It's kind of a long answer.
No, it's great. And what is the work that you're doing in terms of language development?
Yeah, we kind of do a variety of things. And like I said, it kind of depends on what the community is asking for. Some communities are really sort of at the beginning of developing their language. So some of them are either developing an orthography or trying to standardize their orthography. Some people are just at the next step, just trying to create more literature and things like that. And then, like I said, some groups have like entire education systems. They're just wanting to basically strengthen those.
So I kind of wonder what that looks like with developing literature or standardizing some sort of orthography. Are there people that are, is there like translation of like books from whatever language to these languages? Or are there people that are creating books, writing books from oral histories?
Yeah, usually creating their own. There's also this issue of everything written in Burmese, especially sort of being written from the perspective of a Burma person. There's a lot of obviously resentment towards. So yeah, and it's just, I mean, they're pretty different, even though it's geographically similar and they're physically close to each other. There's really quite a lot of variety in all these different communities and their way of life. So it's a bit difficult to translate. I mean, once you get to a certain level, you can start translating things and that way sort of introducing people to other places and other ways of life and other cultures, right?
And so similarly, is there a lot of multilingualism?
There is, yeah. I mean, in certain areas, there's not as much in other areas, especially if you speak Burmese. Burmese people are Burma people who speak Burmese as a first language, right? Who grew up speaking Burmese. They don't necessarily, like most English speakers, don't typically learn other languages. Some people have switched their language just for safety reasons, because kind of, if you don't speak Burmese, it's kind of a shibboleth of death in some ways. So yeah, it really depends on the area, not even necessarily the language specifically. So like for the Karen, they're kind of spread out all over lower Myanmar. People who live, there's a region just west of Yangon, which is the major city in the south, the former capital, not the capital anymore. So just west of there. So a lot of people who live in that region have started to shift their language use, right? They're kind of switching from Karen to Burmese. And I think part of it is because there is a lot easier access. The East, just geographically, it's more difficult, but also it's more concentrated, just Karen people, whereas in Irrawaddy, that's the name of that region, it's more mixed. You might have even different Karen languages, so a full Karen village and then a Sagoa Karen village and then Burma village and then a village that's mixed. So it kind of just depends. It depends on the area, if it's urban or if it's rural, if it's in an area that's run by one of the many different armed groups, or yeah.
You said that they were cut off from the rest of the world. I'm guessing there hasn't been much migration there from other places, or has there still?
Into the country?
Yeah, into the country.
I guess it depends on who you ask. That's kind of the Rohingya issue. Burmese people all claim that they're immigrated from Bangladesh, but of course Bangladesh, they're not from Bangladesh. So, and there's some Chinese migration. I'm not sure if I should call it migration. But that's really about it, I would say. Okay. I mean, obviously these groups, like these borders are artificial. So I think there's forth in some places. Some places the border's pretty porous, but it's not necessarily people from outside. It's just like a Chin person on the Myanmar side versus a Chin person on the India side.
Is there a lot of multilingualism with Chinese?
In certain areas, and on the border, yeah. A lot of people go to China to work, but not in the rest of the country. Because there's a lot of Chinese sentiment in the country, but on the border, definitely.
I just realized, this all sounds complicated to me, but I realize, just being American, so this is my reference point, American history is also very complicated, but we only hear it from the perspective of white people. So it sounds a lot less complicated when they're the ones telling the story. So I don't think that this is unique in that it feels complicated, but it just made me realize it really matters who's telling the histories.
It's something I've noticed during the past however many months, 9 months. It's always a little bit like, I mean, I guess it's factual, but you're kind of missing this piece.
Right.
Not just from a Bamas perspective. I think that's part of it. Sometimes it's like, oh, this is just an urban perspective, or this is just like the delta, the center part of the country. Yeah. Well, it's kind of part of the reason I'm kind of usually kind of tucked away in my little part of the world, and I don't really talk to people. To speak up more, because people are just hearing this one perspective, and people want to talk about really these kind of issues of ethnicity and language, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of seen as, what's the word? Like you're creating tension. You're saying, oh, we need to be unified. We need to be unified.
Oh.
So a lot of people, like the non-Bama people, hear that a lot, right? And so I feel like, well, I can speak up. Like, I'm not afraid of like catching that flag, and it's not, I haven't experienced the same trauma that they have.
Right.
Like of language loss and like being forced to assimilate to another way of living. So I don't experience that as the same way as they do either, if that makes sense.
Why is it important that anyone, particularly people that have been, colonized and oppressed structurally for so long, have access to their language?
Yeah, it's kind of a sort of basic question that we often just sort of glide past. Like, why language to begin with? Why are we even talking about this? Language is like kind of what makes us human, right? And in some ways, it's like what gives us agency. It's like how we communicate with others. It's how we do everything, really. Like everything passes through language and affects every part of your life, affects every different sector, every domain. It doesn't matter what it is. Obviously, it's not just confined to linguistics. It affects education, like we were just saying, and engineering and math and science and literally everything, because it's just a central part of what it means to be human. It's kind of a part of like, I don't know how to say it, like our essential life, right? Losing your language, I think, can be kind of like losing your soul, losing your way to navigate through the world, ways of relating to each other, to the earth, to everything.
Right. Yeah.
And knowledge, a lot of knowledge.
And knowledge. Yeah, especially when you think about climate change.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
I think I read about like place names even in the United States that like contained information about like the geographic location, like swampy land, and then we changed it to like Sir Richard whatever. And then we're like surprised when like there's a flood or something. Well, it's preventable. You think of like all the proverbs and the parables that are kind of encoded in the language that you can't really translate.
What can we as people outside of the country do to help either the language situation or maybe even the political situation? I don't know what's feasible. Maybe you have a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's always good to just learn more. I don't really want to impose my perspectives on other people. You might have a different perspective. But knowing that a lot of what you'll see and read is often from like one particular perspective, you can do a little bit and realize, oh, well, maybe there's another way to look at this. Yeah, there are lots of different advocacy efforts happening. There's actual bills that have been, what's the word, proposed, I guess, in Congress, both in the House and the Senate. If you are interested in learning
Wait,
more
in our House and Senate?
Yeah, in the States.
Oh, okay.
The Burma bill. It's a political bill in the House and the Senate. It basically just authorizes more sanctions against the military and authorizes more humanitarian aid. It's kind of the core of the bill. So if that's something that you are interested in or agree with, I mean, if you don't agree with it, you don't have to ask your reps to co-sponsor it. But you can still talk to your representatives about what's happening and ask them what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, I would just, in general, raise awareness about the country and what's happening.
Yeah, I've learned so much from you today.
Are there any last words you want to give to our listeners about Myanmar, languages?
Man, I mean, there's so much I could say. It's a very interesting place, I think. So I think it's worth learning about. Yeah, not particularly.
You know what I forgot to ask? How did you get interested in Myanmar in the first place?
So when I was doing my master's, I met a bunch of Burmese refugees. So I thought, well, that sounds interesting.
Where did you do your master's?
It's a small school in Dallas.
Okay, and you met them there in Dallas. Is there a large Burmese population in Dallas? Okay.
It is. I guess that's something else anyone that was interested can do. There's Burmese people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mostly familiar with the United States, so having lots and lots of different fundraisers all over, so you can do some searching. Maybe it's been written about in your local paper about they have different food fairs and concerts. That's what we've been doing. Or if there's like a Burmese restaurant or Burmese businesses, you can support them.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Because Burmese people, they're sending millions of dollars. And most Burmese people, like the diaspora, most of them came as refugees, right? So they're like all not super well off, but they're just doing a really phenomenal job at raising funds and sending funds back to their friends and family.
Thank you so much. I've learned so much from you. This was a very fun conversation. Fun in the way that I liked talking with you, not that everything was a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for making the time to talk to me. I'm glad
Absolutely.
I can share about Myanmar.
Yeah, and we always leave our listeners with one final message.
Don't be an asshole.
Oh, jinx. Jinxies. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So this month we would like to thank our newest patron, Sophie. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Yes, thank you, Sophie. Yay. We appreciate you so much.
Yes, and a reminder, if you want to support us, www.patreon.com/vocalfriespod.
The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by me, Carrie Gillen, for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at VocalFriesPod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com, and our website is vocalfriespod.com.